One. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have with me former student. I don't even want to say is a mentee, more like a nephew, a friend, um, an artist peer. My boy Rowan. We just recounted off air. It's been 7 years,
Yeah.
7 years plus. Um, and in a short time that we got to know each other, so much has happened. And I've just been honored to be in this man's life. Um, and he actually showed up at a point where I went through a number of trials and tribulations. And even though um, our paths eventually took different courses, Rowan has stayed in touch. Um, he's popped up on the occasional Sunday. We've met up for coffee, uh, and I've just been blessed. And so hopefully, no, I know you all will be blessed too. So um, here's Rowan. And one of the prerequisites for coming on to the show is to wear a shirt, hoodie, sweatshirt that's your favorite or represents you. So tell us what you have on, Rowan.
So what I have on is this hoodie. It's got a graphic that I designed um inspired by a Porsche 91730. Um and it was the second sort of production design that I created for this company called Blip Shift, where you
Mm,
can submit your artwork. And I did two of them, and this was the second one, and you can make money off of it. So it was sort of my first like production design,
that's
clothing
fire.
design.
That's fire. And tell us about the background that you have, because you're the first one to have a personalized background. What is that, and why is it so gorgeous?
So this here, I'm gonna try and this is it's my a project that I did over the summer. Um, but it's based on a project I did over the summer, which is a Scout uh adventure pickup truck. But I recreated my based on my sketches and sort of layout design, package design that I created. I 3D modeled it and 3D rendered it. It's still a work in progress, but this is where I'm at right now.
That's a work
Uh,
in progress. Okay.
yeah, that's a work in progress. Yes.
You're not happy with that? Shazam, man. Well, that thing, that everything is amazing,
Thank
from
you.
your shirt to your background. So obviously it might be an understatement, but cars might be what you're passionate about.
Hmm.
Or in your own words, I mean, is it beyond cars? Is it just overall different vehicles? What are you passionate about? And then how'd you get to that space?
So I'd say what I'm passionate about, it's not really exclusive to cars, but it's
Mm,
just it's design in general, but it has more of a focus on like transportation design because I mean I like cars, trucks, I've some planes. I've always liked trains as well. I'm finally starting to learn train names. Um, and yeah, and really, but I also just like well designed products and
mm,
really anything. And I sort of got the passion, but it all started with cars and automotive, and I
mm,
really got that like um sort of I mean, since I was born, both my dad and my grandfather were
mm.
both and still are both really into cars and just they collect cars. So I've always sort of been exposed to like um I guess more abnormal cars,
Mm.
stranger cars than the like that you don't necessarily see every single day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and it just sort of took off from there. And yeah.
No, I think like I remember you showed me a photo of that rusted Toyota Land Cruiser and SF. That's always part.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you always look for, obviously there's design, but there's function to it.
Yes, yes.
And I don't, and where it's underappreciated by the public, and people may
Yeah.
not see the beauty in it, but you always found that. And um, but does he work in the automotive industry?
No, he's in the tech industry, but
So
he's
yeah,
just into cars.
that's awesome how you made it your own. So um, you're at Art Center right now. What is your declared major?
Transportation design, Bachelor of Science.
Um, how'd you how'd you get in? Like, what did it look like before you applied? Like, in regards to how'd you get prepared?
Um, how did I get prepared? I would say I first started by talking to the people around me, um, and getting their advice from other students. But like most of the students were all going into tech, but there was one person who introduced me, who was going into the art field, and they introduced me to this thing called National Portfolio Day, where you can
Huh.
get representatives from colleges across the country
Yeah.
to basically look at your portfolio. So I just sort of started looking at portfolios, and I crafted my own portfolio based on their requirements, and I got it looked at by three different colleges
Mm,
that I was interested in going
yeah.
to. And I think after that day, I got accepted into two of them
Mm,
fairly quickly. But Art Center, I basically sort of got like a personal uh, counselor or representative
hmm.
who helped me revise it, and
Okay.
I would send it to her, and she would give me tips, and
Oh wow.
um, we would work on it. And I just kept sketching and putting together uh, sort of what I would say is a more diverse group of
Mm,
projects
yeah,
to
yeah,
show
yeah.
my range in design, because I had a folding scooter, I had like a city car. I also had a Scout SUV that was orange. It was a bit different from the truck in the background, but um, and some other stuff that was just to show my range, because some
Yeah.
people submit just like all sports
Cars.
cars or yeah, yeah. Um, And actually, I only submitted three originally, but they did something they don't normally do, and they contacted me back, and they were just like, "Give us two more."
Wow.
And then I did, and I got in.
Um, what would you say before you got in was a pivotal moment of your life, uh, that shaped you to where you are right now and you getting in?
Um, that's a good question. There's, I guess, how I'll answer it is sort of
Mm,
starting with how I figured out about Art Center and
yeah.
just the whole field was I sort of knew about it in like the fifth grade because I was really into Hot Wheels,
Wow.
and I learned that all the Hot Wheels designers went to Art Center because they're all transportation designers. So my original goal was to be a Hot Wheels designer. Um, and then obviously there was also the uh but I mean I didn't really know what to do about it. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like I went on, but then in eighth grade, obviously there was the train ride on the BART to, I don't even know where we were going, Oakland Museum or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that it? That's
No, no,
correct.
no. Hold on. No, we went to SF.
We went to SF. Where did we go in SF?
We went to a museum. We did go to a museum, but we had to cross over. So we took the BART and we had to go through like the underground. This is the first time ever went underground
Okay.
with the BART. But yeah, we went to Art Museum in SF. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. But we went there, and you told me about I can't, it was one of your friends or mentors.
Oh, Max Sims. Yeah.
Max. Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of Maya. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, from there, like it just evolved. We had I he gave me tips, draw with your shoulder, you know. Um,
The car
we had a
design club.
yeah, car design club with all the sketches hanging off the walls. And yeah, and then I kept going from there. And at some point, I guess sort of late in high school, I kind of like I don't know. I was in sort of like a slump. I
Hmm.
started losing steam, but I had to, because I don't know, I just sort of lost confidence for some reason.
Hmm.
And but I knew I had to get my portfolio submitted and I would regret it if I didn't
Yeah.
do it and get the thing together. And then so I did, and yeah.
Well, I wasn't there for that part of your life, but I am definitely proud of you. Always been proud of you. Even
Thank you.
even when I told you to draw with your shoulder and that disgust in your face, you were like, bro, who are you? Um, but you knew though too, because I put your drawings on my wall. I don't think some people appreciate it. I'm not gonna name names.
Yeah.
They're like, what is that? I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Um, and part of it was I wasn't the art teacher. And you're like,
Yeah.
Mr. Robert, can you be the advisor? I was like, I don't think that's kosher, but sure. Um, for for me, uh, what I remember paying witness to your growth, it wasn't about drawing, but it was about bravery and taking a chance. I was actually at school cleaning, um, on the weekend, and you sent me a message via Instagram because you were at Art Center during car show. You messaged me like, Mr. Robert, I saw Jay Leno. And I was like, luckily, like I was on Instagram because I don't have
Yeah.
like pop-up notifications. I was like, bro, go take a selfie with them. And I don't your response was like, and you did it, man. And you did it. And I think dreams and taking that step forward is so abstract and it's so scary.
Very
Um,
scary.
it is. And I think you could tell consistently. I don't know if I'm a troublemaker in that way, but I always say, why not? Just why not? We're not, I don't want to digress. This is your time, but just making stupid leaps like the audience won't get this. An underwater dojo.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, we won't go there. We won't go there. The audience is like, what is happening? Um, when you encounter problems, how do you solve them? And how do you determine what is true?
Problems like in general or
Uh,
just more or
What
any.
whatever it is. I mean, maybe like even when I came across, for example, when I said draw with your shoulder, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
On what grounds? Like, but there's still a leap of faith because, like I said, like I'm a writer. I used to draw, but
Mhm.
what led you to think like, you know what, Mr. Robert, he might sort of be right. And then obviously you come across a lot of naysayers and your peers, all this new stimuli, right?
Mhm.
How do you know what is true? And then how do you deal like maybe like disagreements or your disagreements with yourself?
That's a good question. So I'll start with sort of like the thing about drawing with your shoulder. And, I've had a lot of experiences like that so far in
Mm.
my first year of college as well, where people have told me to do stuff. And I'm just like, I do not want to do that. That's terrible. But I, what I've learned is
Yeah.
that it's usually for just the betterment of myself, and they have
Yeah.
more experience. And I think, like, what do I have to lose if I
Mm.
do this? No problem. Because I
Yeah.
mean, there was one class that I took in spring that I hated it, the first
Mm.
part of it, because
Yeah.
basically, I mean, my professor told me to sketch completely different from the way I'd been sketching for like the past 4 months. And I was like, What? And then I did, and I hated it for a couple of weeks, but then I learned to love it and I started seeing things in a different way.
Whoa.
It's just like that's how you grow.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I really just sort of, I guess, have have faith that people they have more experience than me and I want to learn from them. And
Mm,
then if I also don't learn anything, then I'm not really, I mean, I don't have anything to lose. Like I can just if it works out, it works, and if it doesn't, oh
yeah,
well, move
yeah,
on.
yeah. It's just practice.
Yeah,
Really, it's just
exactly.
practice. Yeah. But yeah, our egos make the stakes way higher than it actually is,
Oh yeah,
you
definitely.
know. In regards to the future of your field, um, what does it look like, especially with like the advent of AI? Is AI going to take over your job anytime soon, or?
No,
Mm,
no. I don't think so because AI it so from what I my understanding and my use of it is it sort of recycles it's based on other people's ideas. So it it can't necessarily come up with new ideas
mm,
that humans can. What it can be used for is, for example, rendering. There's a software called VisCom,
okay.
where you can actually upload a car sketch and it will just like a line drawing, basically,
Mm,
and it will render it like Photoshop render with interesting lighting and details and everything. But it's still, I mean, it's still kind of, for lack of a better word, janky. Like there's just things that don't really make sense, you know,
yeah, yeah,
details that
yeah, yeah,
aren't perfected and you
yeah,
can use it like that, but it's still not new ideas. But there are, I guess, a lot of really important uses for AI,
yeah,
I will
yeah.
say, for things like backgrounds,
Mm,
um, like Photoshop generative fill, for example,
mm,
if we want to use a
mm,
background or
yeah,
extend something that we've drawn,
yeah,
that's a great way to use it. But I don't think it's going to be used to sort of be able to design
mm,
vehicles and also all cars to go to actual. I'm just thinking this right now, actually. They all have to be turned into 3D,
uh, okay,
right? Through clay models and
okay.
into a because cars are
Ah,
physical products. So
okay.
if you take an AI like drawing and interpret and or just if an AI gives you a 3D model of a car and you
Mm-hmm.
put it into a space, it can it'll probably look quite weird because there's like a one thing that I learned is that you know there's a human touch and sometimes to design to make
Yeah,
things look correct and sometimes there's things that you know are mathematically correct
yeah,
like this thing is mathematically perfectly in the
yeah,
center
yeah, yeah.
or whatever and they look weird when you actually look at them for
Um,
some reason
okay,
it it can do with typography as well.
okay.
Letter spacing
Yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah.
word. All logos, they're they might use an existing font, but the spacing is changed
Ah,
um on purpose because it looks kind of weird if you just take it for what it is. So
mm,
I feel like AI it is very useful for a lot of things, but I think without that human touch, it'll never place it because in the end, we're not AIs. You
mm-hmm.
know, still see things as humans.
Well, I think just touching on that point, you're right though too. In terms of like um processing space in reality, because it can't
Yeah,
reproduce reality too. So in
yeah,
terms of like adjusting for dimensions, our senses can pick it up. It doesn't have any senses,
yeah,
right? And then going on to a previous point that you were talking about, I'm just trying to translate this um in my own brain. I mean, it's like it can do work in terms of like polishing and editing, and that's on the
yeah,
surface. But the
yeah,
logic already has to be there. It has to be built in.
yeah.
And then what I was talking to um, someone else off the podcast, it was about in regards to science.
Mm,
Um, it's science is about discovery and invention, and it has to do it in reality,
yes,
right? And so AI can't actually discover anything. Like you made a perfect point. It just recycles what's already
yeah,
there. So it's not discovering anything novel. And then it doesn't know the necessity of a physical reality, so it can't invent anything, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no request for the need. That's wild.
One
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
one example that I think of is my sister is really into crocheting and she told me about these
Mm,
AI generated crochet patterns. And they're because crochet patterns are just text. It says
hmm
this loop here
uh-huh.
or and but AI like ChatGPT can generate that, but it has no idea what the actual thing is going to look like. So people have crocheted these things that are just like, you say create a crochet pattern for a giraffe and it goes, okay, here. And then it turns out to be just some kind of like blob monstrosity of like it's just it doesn't work because it doesn't know what it's doing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't translate into the real world because like it can do renderings and sketches and
hmm
stuff, but that's not it looks cool, but it's not real.
Yeah.
And one thing one of my professors told me is that like it all of this stuff is meaningless until it's put into 3D because the end product for cars is a physical product that
Yeah, yeah.
exists in the real world. So yeah.
So we sort of touched upon this, and I don't see it so much as a setback. So when we were talking about when you're getting your portfolio reviewed, and especially with your experience in school, or actually we can even talk about this though too. Well, you had that slump. You've made stepping stones out of your stumbling blocks. That's another thing that I'm proud of you. It's not so much the product, but you keep going on the journey.
Mhm.
So how do you handle quote unquote, and I don't like using this word failure, failure, setbacks, or stumbling blocks?
That's a good question. Really, I just try and sometimes like step away from like my emotions, not let my emotions get
Mm,
involved and look at certain situations like for the reality of what they are,
mm,
and then just try and move on because a lot of the stuff that, we think is some giant thing at the time is just really one event in a long train of events that's kind
yeah.
of meaningless.
Mm,
And it's really hard though, sometimes, especially if you like, I mean, even in for this scout project here, my when I initially did the project, I
hmm
was doing my renderings in the car on the way to the midterm, and they did not come out very good,
mm,
but I still gave my best presentation and I looked at it and I was just, it's a learning experience. It's another thing is you just I try and treat most things as like a learning experience
yeah.
and just kind of learn from it and move on and think about how if in a similar situation in the future I would act differently, how I would
Yeah.
act differently and sort of learn what I wouldn't do.
Yeah. I mean, art is tough because it's so personal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then you're presenting something onto a space that's supposed to be objective.
hmm
Um, and the other reason it's personal is people don't understand the amount of the energy, the time, right? The sacrifice
Yeah.
of being able to present that, even if it's imperfect. And so, um, but the wiser you get, the more experience you get, um, I think there's still always encounters of just the step back or stumbling block hitting the heart.
hmm
But too, it's about perspective, and
Yeah.
it's all about perspective, and um, and then, but when you first start out, it's about perception. right?
Hmm.
You know how you see things, but the more you grow, and actually, you're talking about learning from your other professors, your other instructors, they're showing you other perspectives, and right, they're showing you other angles, quote unquote, and um, you just have a closer encounter with objective reality if you're able to pull everything together, you know, because
Yeah,
I try to tell my students, no matter how different we are, right? I believe there is an objective reality, but we all have different encounters with reality, whatever
yeah,
it might be, right? Um, Race, gender, culture, the amount of age, the amount of time we've been on this earth, right? But there's still objective reality, but how we portray it, that's the difficult part.
hmm,
That's why communication is difficult. Visual communication is difficult, you know, and
yes,
we want to make something universal. And that's the thing with like design, something that's like ultimately can appeal to as many people as possible.
hmm.
Um, so, um, actually transitioning from that, um, for as far, wow, since your Hot Wheels days, right? What piece of advice would you give to someone starting in your field? I actually met someone, a student, shout out to you if you know who you are, a couple years ago. He was he was interested in cars and he was dueling in my class. I'm like, bro, this is English. What are you doing? And then my face actually wasn't like that. I didn't put him on blast, but I was like, you need to draw with your shoulder. What piece of advice you'd give to someone starting in your field?
Um, I guess just persevere
Mm,
and be in touch. Like if it's your dream, don't let other people around you, like they might be all wanting to go into some different field or some other kind of field, and that's okay. And if that's not what you want to do,
yeah.
then don't. You have to stick to what you want to do. And it can be really challenging, especially, you know, like when you start applying to colleges right out of high
Mm,
school, it's, I mean, you don't necessarily have a sense of who you are. And I mean,
mm, yeah.
people can be any age and still not have that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm still working on it myself, but it's just, how do I sum it up? Don't be, don't think that because what you're doing is different, it's somehow wrong,
Mm,
because it's not. And there's more to the world than just, computer science or whatever it may be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, and meeting you and observing you, um, and seeing you in a demographic that you're in, it's so tempting to conform, right? Or you
Yes.
gaslight yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and I think what folks don't understand, especially about the admissions process, or even when you go into the work world, when you get interviewed, they want to, people want to know, whether again it's in admissions or in the work field, is do you know what you're passionate about? Do you know who you are?
Yeah.
Um, are are you willing to go the extra mile? Because um, there's you want excellence in your field, and you don't want to expect bare minimum.
Mhm.
And um, and so when you turn in a portfolio that's very unique, and then again, kudos to you. Um,
Thank you.
I don't know if you remember, like I shared, like so I remember Max Sims telling me that Honda specifically wanted people to design scooters before they ever entered into the car field. As much as people want to go into designing automobiles, um, scooters are really important. You
Yeah.
know, a lawnmower is actually really important.
Yes.
Um, and so I think it, like I said, it's uh a shout out to you in regards to how much range your portfolio had.
Thank you.
Um, it takes a lot of sacrifice, and you feel like the ugly duckling, right?
Yeah.
But go figure, you're not an ugly duck, you're a swan, right? And that's
Yeah.
why, I'm so glad you're at where you're at because there's other people that are like you.
Mhm.
Compared to all those years where you're like, am I supposed to be here? Like, why?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Now, um, how intense is it where you're at right now at Art Center, and how do you balance work with personal life?
Um, that's a really good question. So, um, this past so for people who don't know who might be watching, Art Center is divided
Hmm.
into three terms: spring,
Mm.
summer, and fall. And the last full term, I took 5 classes, which I'd never taken five college classes before, by the way. But I did was in summer because most recently I chilled out and I just took one class. But
Okay.
in summer I took 5 classes, and um I don't know if this is a normal college thing, but we get assigned homework over break that's due on the first day of class.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and I may or may not have put off that homework a lot, and that was not good because um, I ended up getting assigned homework, but like still having homework to do that's due before
Wow.
the other homework.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it was a lot. I mean, I took 5 classes. I took an interior design class and like car interior, and that was like 10 pages of sketches each week. And then for that class, then my exterior class, which is where the scout is from,
Hmm.
was like the first week it was 15 pages, but then every week thereafter was 30 pages a week. Um, and then my visual communications class was also usually like 16 to 30 a week. And that was more like rendered stuff. So we have to do like chalk and gouache and marker stuff. And then eventually we got into Photoshop. And then I had another 3D modeling class where um, we had a lot of different little assignments, usually one each week, and practice stuff. And then I had a class for creating the vehicle package, which are you familiar with that term?
Mm-mm, no. So can you
So
elaborate?
yeah, basically it's like one of, if not the most important things in car design. And because what are cars for? They're designed to move uh people and their stuff.
Hmm.
And in order to do that, they need to be able to fit people and their stuff. So the package is basically like the layout of a vehicle that helps you sort of it determines a lot of things like the segment and what kind of vehicle it is. So
Wow.
it's where you sort of lay out like the spatial relationship between, like you figure out like cargo capacity, driver seat height and position. The drivetrain can influence it a lot. Like if you have, a internal combustion engine, that'll drastically change um, sort of the package. Um, the package is basically like what makes something like a mini, original mini, so
Yeah.
much more
Yeah.
spacious than other vehicles because it's designed to fit humans better. Um, yeah. So I learned a lot about that class. And what I learned is that if you have a legit package,
Hmm.
then but maybe your sketches don't look very good, you know what you have? You have maybe an ugly real car that can really exist and can really fit people. Whereas if you have um a beautiful looking car,
Yeah.
but it can't exist because you have like 40-inch wheels and the driver's head is cut off, then you just basically have an art piece. And I learned a lot about that because I mean I was doing some car packages where like I did a Mini Cooper that
Hmm.
was like the size of an original Mini, but it had like wheels that were like, they went up to like here
Ah.
on a human body, and I had windows, rear windows that would like come up to this part of like your temple so you can't even see outside. Like the belt line went that high. So it's super important. But I had that class. So to get back on track, I mean, it was a lot. I was working every day of the week, no weekends. Um, and I, all in all, probably didn't, it's a 14-week term,
Mm,
and I didn't sleep for at least 14 nights. So that's like 2 weeks worth of sleep lost in total. Probably more though. Um, but I one trap a lot of people fall into is
hmm.
they think you have to not sleep to succeed. I
Mm,
don't believe that. I believe it's all down to time management,
yeah.
and I just get distracted by Instagram and stuff. So, yeah, but I mean, I honestly like personal life, most of my friends go to art center, so it was actually kind of easy because I would just see them every
Mm,
day.
okay.
Um,
That's awesome.
And then I live with my parents, so I see them every day when I came home
Good.
as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I mean, for other people, I would just, maybe message them on Instagram,
yeah.
or one thing that just became really important to me is
Mm,
just little times going out to dinner with
yeah,
people.
yeah,
And that just, I mean, it's not a lot, but it became like a lot more, it becomes more special when it's
yeah,
like you have to you're working and don't get to do that as
yeah,
often.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's a big sign of adulting. Because now you're choosing who you're spending time with, right? And
yes.
making, sacrificing. Yeah, what you shared is really profound on so many different levels, especially about the vehicle packaging part. It's like just hearing you talk about form following function and just elaborate, like just like putting it down, dude. An educator feels so proud right now. Dude, that is just awesome, man. Um, and you sound like you're having fun. So,
Yeah.
now I have to ask this question. Uh, a book. What is a book that has significantly influenced you?
Um, Honestly, like more recently and
Hmm.
in regards to my field,
Yeah, yeah.
it's this book called H Point, which is all about vehicle packaging,
Oh,
and it has everything. It
dude,
has I
sorry. Mature Rowan, like is just killing right
it,
now. Go
it
ahead.
has everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
And like I didn't know that because we take a class in third term about it, but
Okay.
most of us buy the book in first term. I didn't understand how to use it for the first two terms,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
now that like I understand what the book is saying, I can reference it. I can understand like, oh, having a good down vision angle for a mid-sized pickup truck is something more than 4 degrees. Like my Scout has 7 degrees of downward visibility or down vision angle. Yeah. Um,
Nerd. I love it, dude. Um, language of the industry. That's so awesome that you really you're using it, man.
yeah. Thank you.
That's fire, man. Um, being an artist, how do you know when to let go or abandon a project? Like, how do you define success?
Um, that's a good question.
When is
I
enough enough?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially with sort of like what I'm doing now, which is, I mean, I'm revisiting old stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think for me, as far as the projects go, it's like if it has a solid story to it, because a lot of car design
Mm,
is about the story of the vehicle, who uses it, what's the feeling behind it, what's the use case. Like we even do storyboards. I've had to do a number of storyboards so far. Um, and I feel like if a vehicle has a solid story to it
yeah.
and a solid or interesting story to it, and also a solid or interesting package that makes sense that can exist, I think if you were unhappy with it, you can go back and revisit it. But some of the stuff that's like from that I did like a long time ago, like earlier
Mhm.
2023, um, it's just sort of it's like practice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just, I mean,
definitely.
everything is practice, but
Yeah,
it's not as sort of profound,
yeah,
and sometimes you also just sort of keep you're never really satisfied
mm,
with something. I
yeah.
found, like, actually this I'm actually really glad I put this as my background because it's so relevant. But this truck, I did so many sketches, and it's like basically if you see it from the side view,
Yeah.
it's like two boxes. It's a square box.
Huh.
And I did so many sketches, and I was never ever happy with like how any of it looked, how
Mm,
any of the body side surfacing looked.
huh.
And for like this 3D model, I just sort of did something. I thought looks good, and I moved on because I can't. Is it possible that I could do, you know, 300 more sketches and
Hmm.
find the one?
Hmm.
Yes, but is it worth my time, or should I? That's I guess really an answer to your question is it's when the benefit outweighs the time that you
Mm,
have to put in,
yeah.
because time is everything, and if you're spending a lot of time on something where your end product won't be that much
Hmm.
different from what you have
Yeah.
now, or it's just not worth it, because you
Yeah.
could in that same amount of time you could create something completely new, completely interesting, completely just and move forward and continue to evolve, instead of basically sort of digging yourself into a hole that goes nowhere.
Yeah. When I'm writing a new piece, a short story, have an idea for a novel or a poem, in terms of like editing, I can constantly edit over and over and nitpick at it.
Yeah.
But I think uh, as when you finally mature, um, well, my process is first and foremost, did I get the story right? Right. And I can continue as long as I continue telling the same story and the elements are there, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right. But is this new thing that I'm going to add, will that change the story? And if
Mhm.
it can improve upon it, then I'm like, okay, yeah, then it has to be redone.
Yeah.
But other than that, if the elements are there, you have to give yourself some time and space to breathe, you know.
Yeah.
Now,
Definitely.
yeah, go ahead.
Definitely. No,
Yeah.
like just time away from something as well is super
Mm,
important, because I mean you can, and like I do this a lot, you just get so involved with something, you stare at it on your screen for hours and you're like, what needs to be done? Something is wrong. I don't know what it is. Um, and you can do, and it just goes nowhere. So what you need to do, you just walk away and do something else for however long and come back to it, and you'll have the answer.
mm, yeah. Um, I don't know if you've probably talked about this in school or you've encountered it or um maybe you've seen it in the industry. What are the ethical implications of your work like in regards to um what happens if a designer or a student in your field cheats or takes shortcuts? Like how can that affect the field or the product?
That's a good question. Um, we haven't, so in my personal experience, I've at school, I've only seen that happen twice.
Mm,
And really it's just more than anything, I think it's sort of a personal setback, and it's
Yeah.
kind of disgraceful to like the meaning, because the whole point is, you're supposed to show your true self. It's artwork.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, at least, like when people, copy designs and
Mm,
stuff, it's just kind of like it doesn't a lot of people say that, designers are futurists,
hmm.
and when you copy stuff, it's just what AI does. It's not pushing us further into the future. It's just recycling the same thing for just to take the easy way out.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this, like, um one thing that I see a lot, like car design specifically, is a talking point is Chinese cars.
Hmm.
Because historically a lot of cars in China have been like blatant copies
Yeah.
of existing cars. Like, I mean, there's things like the Land Wind, which is a Range Rover Evoque, basically. But they have moved past that. And I keep seeing all these
Hmm.
new Chinese cars on
Yeah.
my Instagram feed, and they're some of the most, I think, interesting and forward-thinking vehicles out there, because you know their sort of mindset has changed
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're pushing us further into the future. Whereas when you don't, like, what if you just copy stuff or stay in the now,
Yeah.
it's not pushing us further into the future. And that's kind of also, I feel that way a little bit about retro designs, because
Yeah. Yeah.
retro designs are great, but they're also not really, it's just recycling. There's a
Yeah.
lot of recycling that goes on.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting how you mentioned that, especially as we're moving towards the EV space. Um,
Yeah.
I'm doing some research into Tesla for, personal reasons, and I actually got to visit the Tesla factory.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that off the podcast. Um, but your your insight matches what the industry is seeing, um, in regards to Chinese companies actually being innovative. First and foremost, it takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what they discovered early on, um, especially because they're used to copying and they admit it, but now it's like moving towards a more, they're making leaps and bounds, because they've learned the hard way. Like, first and foremost, they don't sell.
Yeah.
Um, and there are consequences when you don't, when you talk about vehicle packaging, form and function, like these things that are off will throw everything off, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, and so they just basically foot the bill in regards to research and doing it right, and then
Mhm.
sending individuals overseas to go to ArtCenter, to go to other um, respected art schools, design programs, and then just actually listening,
Yes.
versus what we see with American car companies, when they're making EVs, they're just repackaging, just like you're talking about, like retro design. They're just
Yeah.
repackaging. But then, at least what I think this is public knowledge, when Tesla or other EV companies are designing from the ground up, it's because the weight distribution for
Yeah.
EV packs is complete, and it changed the center of gravity too. But
Yes.
if you don't
Yes.
design that in mind, it throws everything off,
Yeah.
and your
Definitely.
capacity like your travel. So that's where you see the Ford F-150 Lightning. It's just like doesn't have the range,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they just basically have the same body as uh what they call ICE, right? Internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Um and but the battery doesn't work that way, and it's going to be too heavy up front.
Yeah.
So
And I guess another thing that I just thought of is really to not copy,
yeah,
and to not is to take a risk.
yeah,
And a lot of people, a lot of companies, like, and individuals as well, are very risk averse. And
Yeah.
one thing that one of my professors said is it's a quote from someone, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like he would rather see us like fail at doing something new and
Yeah.
interesting than
Yeah.
succeed in basically recycling. Um, yeah.
Just real quick before I move on to the next question, I totally have to take a look over my shoulder. And do you know what this is?
Is it a Toyota 2000 GT
Yeah, mom. That's right, man. Thank you, man.
from the Hot Wheels, I believe 2014 Hot Wheels Workshop line,
Man,
I
I'm so
think.
grateful, dude. So grateful, man. How do you stay motivated and focused when you're on the grind?
That's a good question. There's a lot of different ways to stay motivated. Um, First of all, it's kind of like a lot of people maybe don't necessarily like to talk about it, but it's true is the money. Like there's a
Mm.
lot of money involved. It's very expensive.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, if you at least for me, sometimes when I think about that, it motivates me to just, get up and go.
Yeah.
But then also motivation, that's just one place for motivation. Motivation comes from a lot of places.
Yeah.
Another place is peers. When I
Mm.
see my peers doing something cool, or I see them doing something in like a different way, then I try and emulate their methods. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like copying designs isn't cool, but just learning from other people's
Yeah.
methods and copying them just to learn is okay.
Yeah.
And like in summer for my visual communications class, I was sort of just not feeling very good. I
Yeah.
was feeling like dropping the class because my work was just not getting better. It
Mm.
like it was not, I was struggling to just sort of manage all the different um, components of these art pieces that we were creating.
Yeah.
And so I decided to hang out. I decided to start hanging out at school with my peers who were doing the same exact thing.
Mm.
And what I learned as well is that, and I mean, my experience was not unique. There were other people in the exact same situation I was in. And learning that was just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not alone in this. Like that also helped kind of motivate me because I was just like, these people, I mean, I'm not the only one
Yeah.
doing
Yeah. Yeah.
homework due at 8 a.m. on Thursday,
Yeah.
on Wednesday night. Like, did that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And also just, I mean, you shouldn't look for external validation necessarily, but
Mm.
words of encouragement
Yeah. Yeah.
do help. So when you get it, um, take it. And I mean, really, and then also thinking about what I would want to do instead. I'm just like, I think about, I'm here. What would I be doing if it wasn't for this?
Yeah.
And then I think about, you know, because it's true. Because I mean, I had a lot of college credits from my college classes in high school,
Yeah.
and almost none of them transferred. If I went to another
Uh,
school and did something like another major that I didn't want to do, I could have been out
yeah.
in 2 years, 3 years, but um I didn't want to. So when I'm sitting there and I'm sketching and I'm just, it's not at that moment I might not be having fun. I just think like there's nothing else I'd want to be doing.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome. Um, what's a misconception people have about you or your work?
um misconception. Good question. Um huh. I don't really know. Is there anything you could add to the question to help maybe I can't really think of anything.
Well, I'm just happy that you are with your tribe now in college. But okay, let's say
Yes.
back in the day
Um,
in junior high, what did people see in you that it's just their imagination and it wasn't you?
well, I guess one thing is like I mean, one thing like at in that time was just grades were super important.
Uh,
And I feel like people didn't see me as like someone who got good grades,
mm,
but I, for the most part, did. I just didn't like making
a fuss about
school
it.
my identity. Yeah, like
Yeah.
people, and I mean, people do it
Huh.
at ArtCenter as well. And it's interesting. Like they talk about just school all the time. And I was hanging out. I have one of my closest friends, he's actually a photography major at ArtCenter. And I took him out to dinner with or we went out to dinner with some of my friends from transportation design. And he was just like, hey, why do you guys only talk about school and classes and work? And I was like, oh. So maybe I've kind of become that to some degree. But
Mm,
back then, that wasn't me. And I kind of, you know, yeah, I don't know. I just don't like being like super braggy about that type of stuff
yeah.
because ultimately it doesn't matter. I mean, for some things it matters, but really at the end of the day, you know, you all graduate with the same degree.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, how do you handle criticism or disagreement? Did you have any group projects, presentations, and encounter that? Um, I know you covered it in regards from your professors.
So for we actually did have a group project um in summer for an interiors for my interiors class, and there was a lot of, at least from my perspective, like I don't think we really had the greatest chemistry.
Yeah, yeah.
And I dealt with that by just, and I felt like I was kind of left out because
Mm,
I mean, I don't know, I felt like I was just kind of, the role that they assigned me to do was not really relevant or to the project or to the class or anything. And so I was just completely honest with them and I told them like,
yeah.
I mean, this is an interior class and you told me to draw an exterior. Like that's not what I want to do because ultimately I'm looking out for me and my grade,
Mm, mm,
and I
mm-hmm,
don't want to be the guy at the end because I know I'm well aware of what the professors are saying, and they're saying to other people who are doing the same thing, they're like, this is an interior class, we don't want to see this. And so I told
mm.
them that, and I was just honest, and I worked it out with one of my members who's probably doing too much anyways.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I just took over part of their thing, and
Okay.
we just talked it out. I was just honest with it, and yeah, and we figured it out. And with to sort of elaborate more on like professor critiques, like I you just can't take it. And I mean, even with like things like that people say or do, you just can't take anything personally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, and that's a big thing that I've been sort of working on learning. Um, because it's really easy to, right? Because you can say, oh, he didn't like that work this
Mm-hmm.
week because he hates me and he's out to get me and yada yada yada
Yada, yada, yada.
yada yada yada. Yeah. But that's not the case usually. Sometimes it is, but that's if that truly is the case, then I think there's other problems you should be worrying about, and you can notify people to deal with that type of thing. But
Yeah.
really, it's just keep trying and listening to what they say, and don't discount their feedback
Hmm.
either, because like I said, they have more experience, and there's a good chance that they probably know something that you don't understand yet, but you will
Yeah.
after you do it, or you will in the future. And I found that happens so many times, like, I mean, throughout, like, my career at Art Center so far, and yeah.
No, 100%. So I mean, it's like uh just touch on what you just said. Um, so because I'm like really short on time with my teaching load and other projects that I'm working on and volunteer work. Um, I don't have time to write new poetry. So I'm in the process of just translating Korean poetry into English for fun. And a light bulb went off. I'm not writing towards publication anymore. I just want to write for fun. Like,
Yeah,
but yeah, and so I don't want to say it's lower stakes, but now I get to experiment. Um,
yeah,
and I remember my professor was like, Robert, you don't have to do a verbatim translation, right? And it's not going to fit. Have fun with it in English, the language that you're utilizing, and let someone else have fun with it. And if you want have rhymes, put it in jazz. Like give it a new form. Like don't be
yeah.
bound to the original form as long as it functions. And right now I'm having the most fun. And that was years ago. I think that was back in 2011, and it's just now hitting me. And I think it's not so much criticism, but maybe um, your professors or peers, if they're helping you out with a new technique um, or trying to give you a new perspective, they're just trying to give you permission. Things might
Yeah,
come easier, um, or it just might add a little bit more.
yeah,
And then the two other parts in terms of what you brought out in regards to your group work experience is first and foremost, um, as you're adulting, I think we all experience this though too, even when we're younger. Actually, you teach people how to treat you,
yeah.
you know. And if you don't establish boundaries, some people will just walk all over you, or they'll
Hmm.
make the boundaries, you know. Um, but I'm glad you came from a perspective of not being vindictive, and your ego and your pride. Obviously, it hurts, right? You're like, hold on, what's
Yeah.
going on? And maybe they already have a crew together, or they're already in a clique, or they know each other like this, and that's not fair, right? But
Hmm.
nonetheless, the right perspective that gives you justification is you're 100%. What's at stake? Your future's at stake. Your
Yeah.
reputation, your relationship, um, because your reputation and your relationship, that is your currency in industry,
Yes.
you know, and you're always auditioning, and you can't tell a professor, well, this group gave me this. Well, you're an adult, you know,
Yeah.
and at the same time, your group members, if you stick up for yourself, I don't want to use it that way, but when you establish yourself, they'll remember you later on too, because
Yeah.
what they want in the future is this is a whole collab process, and if they're um, designers, artists, scientists worth their salt, and they're trying to be objective, and you're trying to make improvements too, it only
Mhm.
behooves each other. You only help each other.
Yeah.
In the future, you don't want to be surrounded by yes people telling you yes all the time. Because again, the implications of taking shortcuts, right? Or just doing whatever, there are consequences.
Yeah.
So, um, thanks for that example. Uh, right now, besides AI, all right, besides AI, actually, AI is not doing that much. What's an idea or concept that you've come across that is in transportation that excites you right now?
Um, Definitely, in like the whole design thing is
Mm.
just 3D and 3D visualization, because we have programs like Blender, which is what I use to make this background here, um, where you can just create like um a 3D model that is, pretty well like for visualization purposes,
Hmm.
not necessarily production. Because we have other another program that we use for that to create
Okay.
like production ready surfaces, but you can basically now have the ability to take a super rough side view sketch
Yeah.
and figure out the surfacing and how it actually appears in 3D and the proportion and everything, and modify it in real time. And you now have, and then render it as well, and create these scenes, and even to satisfy requirements for Photoshop renderings. I've been wanting to do it. I haven't done it yet, but I know a number of people who have. They just sketch on top of these images that they
Uh,
create, and Photoshop render it. Um, and they even have a software now called Gravity Sketch,
hmm.
which is actually a VR program that you wear, and it's a 3D modeling program for car design. And I mean, it's not just for car design, it's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
product
yeah, yeah.
design, but
Yeah.
we use it, and you can like sketch things out and create 3D models in 3D, and you can in VR and understand how humans actually feel like, because you can sit inside your own car because you can see your car in your space. Augmented reality, yeah. And you can sit in it, and especially, I mean, they do motorcycles as well, so that's also important because motorcycles are designed like around humans as well, and
Yeah, yeah.
you can feel how it kind of feels to sit on your own bike and everything.
Wow.
I've never used it
Yeah,
yet,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I've seen a lot of what it can do, and it's super cool.
So not only is, tech in your industry more powerful than ever, it's more accessible.
Yeah,
Um, and you would think like, because I seen Blender way back in the day, and it wasn't, or people weren't using it like they're using how you're using it. What I see in your background, right?
yeah.
I just saw like cartoony Pixar animation-esque. I never. That is gorgeous. That's
Thank you.
because usually it's just like Maya, and I'm paying out the yin yang for like, the proprietary version, but
Yeah.
that's fire.
Yeah, and Blender's all free, and you can get add-ons and YouTube videos. Just watched like YouTube videos for to do the textures, and all these textures like the mud and the paint and everything is all Blender. And there's even add-ons that you can get that where you can just import 3D models like this bike. I didn't do the bike, I
Okay.
modified it, but
Yeah, yeah.
you can import things to help you visualize stuff. Sometimes they're not very good, but
Yeah.
they're free. So yeah.
Free 99.
Yeah.
How do you approach learning something new?
How do I approach learning something new? Um, Really the best way is to just sort of dive in, I think.
Mm,
And I mean by start by doing it yourself, and then looking at,
mm,
or if you feel sort of, sometimes I get like anxiety about, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to do it, how am I going to do it? um the best thing to do is, I mean, you can research all those methods and then just pick one and
mm,
do it and see how it works. And then if you don't like it, then you either do it again and see if it works, and if not, just try another method, and or ask other people who
mm,
might have done it before. um that's one thing that I've learned a lot, as well as it's okay to ask for help, because um really, like at school, the way that they talk about it is they
mm.
say, you know, you guys are sort of competing with each other to
Yeah.
some extent, but really you're all competing with other schools. So
Mm.
it would be like, it's in our best interest to help each other out, to bring each
Yo.
other up, so we can, have an amazing grad show, and really impress, um and just keep pushing each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Art Center produces a good product, right? There's only, I think, only three, from what I remember, like three legit schools in the United States that actually directly send people into the transportation design industry. So, and Art
Yeah.
Center is one of them.
Yeah.
Any famous alum out of Art Center? Just a name drop real quick, or projects that come out of Art Center.
Um, Name drop. Well, you got uh Anders Warming, who is the head designer at Royce right now, and
Okay.
he designed the original Z4. He came and visited us, and that was super cool. Um, and then I mean you have like Franz von Holzhausen, head designer at Tesla. He comes around.
Hey, you
Um,
gave me one of the first sneak peeks of the Cybertruck, man.
yeah, yeah.
True that.
That they actually brought a production. I wasn't there, but a
Wow.
matte black production spec one showed up.
Why were you there, man? You're supposed to send me like, just you're supposed to send me the spy shots, man.
And then you have like Henrik Fisker, who's Fisker.
Yeah,
Chris Bangle, who's done all kinds of things like his work at BMW.
yeah.
Um,
Shh.
and think of let me think of some other ones.
Well, everyone can go Wikipedia it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. People can Wikipedia. Yeah. There's a lot of great ones. A lot of
yeah.
great ones. And yeah.
Uh, mm,
One more. Sasha Silipanov. He designed I have it right here, the Bugatti Chiron. And the Koenigsegg Gemera and the Huracan and a bunch of other really
oh,
awesome supercars.
oh. All right, stop flexing, man.
Okay, okay.
Stop flexing. Uh, so that's my fault. I gassed you up. What's a question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Um, First thing that comes to my mind is, am I doing this because I want to be doing it,
Mm,
or because someone else has led me to believe I should be doing it or
uh,
has told me to be doing it?
that's deep, man. Um, how do you see your work impacting society in the future?
Um, Positively. Um,
Yeah.
Really, I just want to make like products that people like and that solve problems,
Mm,
um, while also obviously looking cool. But um, really, that's really important. Like one pressing issue right now is the
mhm.
lack of an electric people's car because $70,000 Lucid or Rivian
Yeah.
is not a people's car,
Yeah.
and the closest thing that you can get in America is like a Model 3,
Yeah.
but which was like under 30 grand with the tax credit, which
Yeah.
it now doesn't have anymore.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm really passionate about, is just sort of, I don't know the right way to do it. I
Yeah.
don't know how you do it, but I mean, just getting a product out there that everyone can enjoy,
Yeah.
like especially in the EV times, because I mean, they that's like the new
Yeah. Yeah.
thing is people have gotten EVs out there. Now they want an EV for everyone.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I'll talk to you off the podcast about it, of what I've seen. And you're right, because that's where our progression is stopping. Because if it's not profitable, companies aren't going to do it.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing. If you look at the Chevy Volt, and the Bolt, they've never been profitable. Never
yeah,
been profitable. Um, Tesla has done it, and of course, we'll talk off the record. Um, and actually, Tesla makes just about everything open source,
yeah,
and so they're trying to encourage people. But then it's an issue of ego and pride,
it is.
or maybe making sure. And this, you're stuck, right, when you're a publicly traded company too. It's like you don't want to offend your shareholders, because then if everyone bails out and they take their money out, they
Yeah,
definitely have any. You don't have anything to run off. So that's a bit, because we need everyone to jump on board, right?
yeah.
Um, all right. So what dream or goal for yourself are you currently working towards?
Um, that's a really good question because I've been doing a lot of like personal growth stuff. I guess
Hmm.
there's a few things. Um, First and foremost, I'd say it's just sort of learning to talk to people and being okay with talking to anyone and everyone about anything and just sort of conversational skills because I it's gotten a lot better, but I realized like, I mean, I tell people like my graduating class in high school was 14 people
Yeah.
and the whole class was like 15. So I didn't have a huge pool then. And then I get thrown into art center and, you know, it's like the whole school is like 1,300 people, which is I was looking at like UC Berkeley or something, and they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
40,000, 80, like some insane
Yeah, yeah,
number.
yeah.
And Art Center is 1,300, and they're also all like sort of once again already a lot of them are
Yeah,
already
yeah.
established cliques and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
um I don't know, it's just an ongoing process, but I've been, talking to people and I know I mean, there's certain subjects like car design where I know
Mhm.
a lot about a little, but I also know a little about a lot.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I can just pick up on different things and talk to almost anyone about anything.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. And then also just sort of I'm in that awkward, like sort of uncomfortable time where you're sort of transitioning from your kid life to your adult life.
Yeah.
So I've sort of been becoming okay with, my tastes changing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and what I want changing and what I like changing. It's
Mm.
sort of uncomfortable because certain things that I used to like seriously identify with,
Yeah.
I'm now just kind of like, this doesn't bring me joy. This doesn't
Mm.
serve me. And figuring out what serves me and what I really enjoy and actually
Yeah.
stepping back and thinking about it. Cause like I used to really think that I like junky old project cars.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
bought a Mercedes at the beginning of this year and it's just, but it gets expensive and
Yeah.
it's just like kind of a pain to manage and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like it, but it's not, I don't know, smooth court. And then also just to add on to that, I mean, being more conscientious with
Mm.
money
Yeah, yeah.
and really thinking before I purchase anything. Cause,
Yeah.
I'll go into a store and I'll see something like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I need to buy it. But then I always walk around with it for a while. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the end, I'm just like, I don't want this. I don't want to spend my money this way. This isn't, it's just, I think about what has happened to similar things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like model cars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All they do is sit on a shelf. I'm in my room right now. There's model cars on every wall and they're just sitting there collecting dust,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
they're great. And at one point, brought me a lot of joy, but now
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sort of moving past that and becoming it's sort of accepting that and accepting that you're, I guess, evolving.
Yeah, yeah. And I say don't be too hard on yourself, man, because I feel targeted, man, because I have comic books, and I will say, and someone who's a hobbyist himself, um, of course, do not spend, like be responsible.
Yes,
But see,
yes.
but see them as benchmarks too, right? So I remember,
Yeah.
so um there's this Spider-Man book that you can see in the background. It's blue. It's actually one of the first books that I saved up for. Um,
Okay.
and I bought when I came to the US as a fifth grader. And it was really expensive. It's what you call a wall book. Like it's not in like um these bins. And so you have to ask the dealer, hey, can you get that? And I think it cost me like $15. That was a lot back then too.
Yeah.
And it seems worthless. So here's a couple things. One is it seems worthless because if you look on eBay or whatever else, it's not priced that expensive. But I was like, then why was it expensive when I bought it, right?
Yeah.
But then I looked at it, there's actually an error on it. And so
Oh,
it's actually worth hundreds of dollars. Um, but for me, what it actually is um, my mom worked as a janitor and gave me an allowance. And
oh.
so now I'm like, and this is my first foray into learning how to read. Like I learned how to read comic books.
Mhm.
Um, and so not buying them because of value, but I just see them as benchmarks,
Yeah.
right? And look, this right here,
Yes,
this
yes.
tells you that's a benchmark, man.
Yeah.
And that came from your collection, dude. So I am grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I definitely agree that I am keeping things that have personal significance, but I
Yeah, yeah.
guess where I'm at
Hmm.
is sorting out what does and what doesn't have personal significance. Because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've got a lot of stuff that, you know, back like a few years ago,
Yeah.
I would be like, this is some super cool thing that I'm just like, I want it. Oh my gosh. But then
Yeah.
looking back on it, I'm like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
almost
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like some of the stuff. And then I also look at obviously the monetary value as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because some things I'm just not that attached to anymore. But other
Hmm.
things like I don't they might be worth money or they might
Yeah.
not be worth money, but I don't care because it's like
Yeah.
you said, it's just a benchmark or a
Yeah.
attachment or significance.
Yeah.
It there's a memory attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and we'll digress real quick. Which is like, you know me, I'm always thinking about my next car, my project car, right?
Yes.
Because the story is, my mom left me some money after she passed because uh I bought myself a Prius. And even though my mom was happy that I bought myself a Prius, I'm pretty sure she wasn't happy that it was a Prius. And so, hey, shout outs to my boy Rowan. He made it look cooler. He was right. I had to take the criticism. I had to take the hubcaps off. Even though my pride was telling him, nah, these are rims. So, um, teenage Rowan was better than 30-year-old Mr. Robert at the time, besides drawing with the shoulder. But anyway, and so, you know, the sentimental part of me wants to buy uh a EV10, Evo 10, right? Um, or a BMW because my mom wants me a BMW, right? But I'm being nostalgic because my first car was a Mitsubishi, and that's what my mom helped me get. Um, or
Is it a
GT, huh?
Galant?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she actually got me a Galant, yeah. And so, or a GTR, right? The
Yeah.
best engineered car to come out of Japan. Um, but no matter what, it has to be white, right?
Yes.
But then I'm thinking, um, as I put it into as I the money that she gave me, I put into a little bit of investment, and it's just making more money than ever. So, I think the responsible thing is, and we'll come to terms later about it. Um, do I have a place to actually maintain it? I do now. I do have a garage, right?
Okay.
But if I'm thinking big, we go big, Rowan. Maybe I need to just buy a commercial building where I just have my own garage.
Yes.
Forget Jay Leno's garage. Shout out to Jay Leno, Mr. Roberts' garage, and then we'll have our own YouTube channel that will self-fund everything. Uh,
Yes.
um, these are the last four questions of the show, and these are existential in nature. Um,
Okay.
just you know, however you want to answer them. Um, what is anxiety?
Um, Fear of the unknown.
Mm,
At least in a lot of cases for me, it's just I get anxiety when I have to do something that I've never done before.
mm,
And it can be as simple as something as like a class that I've a new class. Every
mm.
term you get new classes, and I get anxious because
Yeah,
I've never taken this class before. It's a new class. And um I mean it can just be anything. It could be talking to someone you don't know. It could be
yeah.
anything. Or I guess fear that something like that happened in the past is gonna happen again
Mm,
for some reason.
yeah,
Or I mean, there's a lot of it, but I think it all just comes down to sort of not knowing and
yeah,
not necessarily knowing what to expect. And the best way to I've found at least, I mean, I still have anxiety, but the best way I found to deal with it, I mean, I don't do it as often as I should, but exercising helps a lot if it's anxiety that you can't take care of immediately for
yeah.
whatever reason. But if you can, like if it's like anxiety about, I don't know, going into a room of people who you don't know or who you haven't seen in a while, or who, maybe there's like investors in there or something. Um, and you have the choice to either leave or
Mm,
walk in, like
mm.
just, I mean, really just diving in and just going for it. Um, Helps a
What?
lot.
Yeah, that's great. Um, that's really insightful. Walk in.
Yep. Walk in, open the door.
Um, what is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. I had to. Um, that's a really good question. I think it's just, you know, always like in a relationship with someone else, not necessarily romantic,
Mm,
it's sort of like always being there no matter what, and, being a shoulder to cry on and giving advice and always supporting each other, but also, being honest and not hiding the ugly truth.
mm.
Um, and something else I was thinking of. Um, yeah, sorry, I lost my train
No,
of
you're
thought,
good.
but
No need to.
it's really just like being there for each other no matter what. And oh, this is not it's like a point where you're so close to someone that you don't quantify things anymore, if that makes any
Ooh,
sense. Like,
ooh, ooh. That's
because
awesome. Yeah,
I've found that in some relationships, I know I shouldn't do it,
yeah.
and I know it can be wrong, but
Mm,
it just tells me like where I'm at with this person
yeah.
is I find myself quantifying something. I'm like, oh, I went to this place or I did this for him. Now I'm not going to do anything until they do something for me. And that's kind of, I mean, it's not great, but it's just that is not love. That is like an acquaintance, right? But love is not keeping track.
Dude, that's what I was about to say too. Love doesn't keep track. Yo, yo. Yeah, because then what you have is a business transaction.
Yeah,
It becomes transactional, man. Um, I can never do enough for you, and you can never do enough for me. Um,
exactly.
and uh, the etymology, right? The origin of the word friend actually comes from favor, a favor that you can't pay back, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, um, for everyone out there, Rowan, I asked for some pictures and he gave me these awesome illustrations of these yachts. Um, gorgeous, gorgeous. I still have to pay for a nice frame for them, but you know, I wasn't back in the day saying, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure this guy grows up to be a successful transportation design so I can get this awesome illustration of a yacht." That's my whole purpose. I'm gonna wait 5 years, 6 years. No, um, now I'm super grateful because and that's the other thing is what people will realize, if they haven't realized already, no one has to do anything for you. So
Yeah.
when someone does something for you and they give up their time, because our time's limited, right? And so
Yeah.
we literally have a limited amount of breaths. And so to say that, hey, I'm giving my life for you, that's everything, man.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and by the way, shout out to your mom.
Yep.
When my mom passed, she just always pulled me aside. I know you had to go home. You're probably waiting in the car. She always just made sure I was okay, man. And she didn't have to. There are other parents that just never said hi,
Yeah.
you know. So thanks, Rowan. What is the meaning of life?
Um, trying new things,
mm,
having and really it's having memorable experiences with people
mm,
because ultimately in the end you're not going to take a suitcase full of all the stuff you own
mm.
to wherever you go, and you can't take it with you, but you can take all those memories and those experiences and everything. um so and there's comfort in routine, but sometimes you have to break routine to really live life to the most. And yeah.
All right. Last and not least, what advice would you give to young people, especially high schoolers, seniors in high school?
um High school is it can be a very awkward and uncomfortable time, and what you do in high school and who you are in high school
Mm,
and what you like in high school and who you like in high school
mm,
doesn't define who you are for the rest of your life. And like most things, it seems like it does, but having been there and having moved past that, it's just like it's okay to evolve from that. And high school is not like the end of your life. There's all these movies out there that show like high school is just they're always set in high school, and everyone is always doing amazing things. They're all like models or something. It's just, it's very unrealistic. And the thing is, like, if you peak in high school, it's all downhill from there. So high school, it's just getting started. In fact, it's just starting on getting started. There's one, I was talking to my mom about this recently. Um, there's a famous car customizer. He was
mm,
like, his name is Gene Winfield, and did a lot of like customs in the 50s and 60s and everything that are
mm.
really famous. And I believe, like 95
Wow.
now,
Okay.
and his slogan is just getting started. He's just getting started. So yeah, keep on keeping on, and be just get through it and try your best, but know that it doesn't define who you are for the rest of your life.
And those are the wise words of a wise man who even made my Prius look a little bit cooler. Thank you so much, Rowan.
Thank you.
Man, that's so proud of you, man.
Thank
So
you.
proud of you. All right. And then we look forward to trying to bring you on maybe in a year, see where you're
Okay.
at. Um, and we'll talk about more about cars, more casual stuff. But this is a great introduction to our audience. And thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you
Rowan.
for having me. Thank you.